It might just be time to activate the wildcard in FPL Gameweek 30 because Erling Haaland has just picked up an injury and he could potentially be missing that game against Leicester on Wednesday, just 3 days' time. He went off with an injury. It looks to be an ankle injury. It doesn't look like it's like horrendously serious, but it could be enough to make him miss the next couple of matches, definitely. Also, if you're an FPL fan and you're not subscribed to this channel, what are you doing? Do hit subscribe on this channel if you want to be up to date with all the latest FPL news and content. Then hit subscribe. We're going to be talking about this Erling Haaland injury, what to do with Erling Haaland. Is it time to activate that wildcard now that we have a couple of injuries to some key players that we might already have in our FPL teams? We're going to be discussing all the double and blank game weeks coming up that are now pretty much confirmed going forward. And as well as that, we're going to be showing you a wildcard team at the end of the video as well to kind of show the teams that we're going to be targeting, showing the players that we're going to be targeting, and as I say, discussing all things around that double game week and blank game week coming up in the future. But we've got to start off by talking about Erling Haaland, who of course went off with that injury. Now, Marmoush came straight on for him and actually did manage to get himself a goal. Now, if Erling Haaland's out for the game and if there's any kind of doubt, this could definitely force people towards that wild card, just due to the fact that they're not going to be able to field 11 players. You've got players like Chris Wood that people have, who's also injured as well. And people want to also be bringing in Crystal Palace assets who are playing against Southampton coming up soon as well. And as well as that, people want to start bringing in Newcastle assets, which at the moment, of course, after blank game week 29 with Crystal Palace and Newcastle blanking, we don't really have too many assets from there at all. So maybe just a wild card right now. Obviously, we don't know anything for absolutely certain in terms of what's going to be happening going forward. But to bring in those kind of assets, and if Erling Haaland's injured, we might not even be able to field 11, so it might make sense just to play that wild card this week and then at the end of the day just roll with it, because we're not going to know exactly what these fixtures are, but we can try and predict it as best as we can. And as you can see on screen now is the current double and blank game weeks for all the teams coming up. Now, we're really hoping Bournemouth would beat Man City in that game. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. They did take the lead, but then obviously Man City did end up turning it around. It would have been a Bournemouth double game week in 33 and a Man United double, but that obviously isn't the case because Bournemouth didn't win the game. So as far as doubles in game week 32, we already know that Crystal Palace and Newcastle both double game week in 32. So you're looking at Alexander Isak as a great option for captaincy in game week 32 with maybe a Newcastle midfielder in Anthony Gordon and Dan Burn. We'll discuss that maybe a bit in the future, later on in the video. And as well as that Crystal Palace, you've got multiple assets in there, which we'll discuss as well later on. But then Crystal Palace do get back-to-back doubles. So Crystal Palace is going to be a team that we do really need to be targeting because we're expecting that double to go in at game week 33. And of course, we have already that confirmed game week in 32 where Crystal Palace do double. So you're looking at 4 fixtures in between 2 weeks. So also as well, if you have Oliver Glasner and you have your assistant managership, probably best to be putting on Oliver Glasner for that run of fixtures. You can put him on maybe in game week 32 or game week 31 as well if you wanted to go for somebody else and maybe transfer. The Crystal Palace do play Brighton in game week 31. So looking at that there, that's the 2 in game week 32. Then going on to the game week 33 doubles, you then have Arsenal, who do have a very favourable double against Ipswich and Crystal Palace, which is, again, that's probably the best double out of the lot there in terms of the 2 fixtures. Ipswich is a great fixture. They are pretty much one of the whipping boys in the Premier League, as well as that Crystal Palace. It's a tougher game, to be fair, but you would expect Arsenal to beat Crystal Palace, even though Crystal Palace have been excellent since about November time. Then we have Aston Villa assets. Now, Aston Villa assets are something that's getting overlooked quite heavily for some. I mean, obviously, they've got a lot of fixtures coming up. They've got the FA Cup semi-final that they're now in. They've also got the Champions League as well. So they have got fixtures around that, and they've got a lot of options in that kind of attacking area. You look at Asensio, you've got Rashford, who did well today. You've got Ollie Watkins, you've got Morgan Rogers. Defensively, Aston Villa haven't been great over the course of the season so far. They've not kept many clean sheets in the Premier League at all. But you could maybe go for someone who's nailed on that Aston Villa defence, looking at maybe like an Ezri Konsa, someone like that who's quite cheap. And as I say, the fixtures aren't even that bad coming up as well. It's just that Aston Villa don't seem to keep too many clean sheets. But as I say, with that double game week 33, it definitely makes a Villa defender potentially a viable option in terms of you want to be getting one that's nailed. Luka Dean's always been a bit of an iffy FPL option. He's good at times and then he's frustrating at times. But as far as like an Aston Villa asset, Konsa's quite nailed on defensively. Then I've already discussed the Crystal Palace double in game week 33. We already know that is going to be happening. We hope that's going to be happening. It should get put in at game week 33. As I say, we're going to be discussing a few more Crystal Palace assets later, and we'll show you the wildcard team at the end. Then we also have Man City now, who of course we know does double now in game week 33. We expect, who again, they have quite a kind double game week against Everton and Aston Villa. Now, a lot depends on what kind of the situation is with Erling Haaland, how long he's going to be out for. We just got to kind of wait and see on the news of that. If Erling Haaland's out for the game, I would just say probably just wildcard in game week 30, and it does really boost the chances in Marmoush's minutes, and you know he'll be that starting striker for Man City, and he's performed pretty well since he signed. He did very well in the Bundesliga, so you're looking at a really good option there who could be starting week in week out for Man City if Haaland's got a longer term injury. And at 7.3 million, I believe marmoush is, it could be an absolute steal. So with Erling Haaland, it's just kind of a case of waiting and seeing. But if he's not going to be confirmed fit for the game, or if he looks like he's going to be missing, for me, I'd just be hitting the wild card and just forgetting about it. And at the end of the day, because you've got so many players that are going to be injured in your team and just like problems all around, it might just be better to hit that wild card in game week 30. As far as one of the teams to target, it would be Crystal Palace assets, due to the fact that Crystal Palace have got back-to-back double game weeks. Now, there's for me a quite clear standout 5 for Crystal Palace in terms of the best options, and especially now with Erling Haaland getting injured, potentially missing out in game week 30, it does really boost the chance of maybe choosing a Mateta as a Crystal Palace option. So you've got Dean Henderson in goal, which I do think he's a great option in terms of a goalkeeper, but I just think there's stronger Crystal Palace assets over a Dean Henderson. So Daniel Munoz for me is probably the number 1 Crystal Palace asset. If I had to rank the Crystal Palace assets, Daniel Munoz will be my first choice, just because of the clean sheets, the attacking contributions, and how good Palace have looked overall since the turn of the year especially. So Daniel Munoz for me would be a player that I'd be putting 100% into my team. Then I'd be having at least one midfielder, either Ismail Assar or Barrett Eze. Now with the injury of Erling Haaland, that would definitely, I mean, if Haaland's not going to be in our wildcard teams and he might be out for the game, that gives us a lot more funds to kind of spread about, which then gives us an extra £1 million we can maybe put into Eze instead of Ismail Assar. But that's not to say Eze is going to do better than Sarr, because I don't think there's really a lot between the two players. But with that Erling Haaland injury, that could definitely boost the opportunity and the chance of maybe us choosing Eberechi Eze on a wild card. Then we also have Mateta as well. So discussing the forwards as options, you have Mateta in there. You obviously have marmoush, we'll talk about a bit later on in the video. There's also Ollie Watkins as well. There's Alexander Isak. There's about 4 real standout strikers there. Obviously, if Haaland is out, if Haaland's confirmed fit for the game, he would be probably in the top 3 strikers for me. But having that, saying that Mateta could be a very decent way into the Crystal Palace side, and one of the better, with the fixture coming up against Southampton, you've got a great opportunity for goals there, and back-to-back double game weeks is quite tempting. But you could maybe go for 1 Crystal Palace defender, and you could go for 2 in midfield with Ismail Assar and Eze if you're not a fan of Mateta, or you could go for 2 Crystal Palace defenders and 1 midfielder or 1 attacker if you wanted to, because Crystal Palace defensively are very good as well. But if I was choosing my first 3, it would be Daniel Munoz and Eberechi Eze, then with Mateta. I'd have one defender, 1 midfielder, and 1 forward. That would be my personal way of going about it. Now, Aston Villa assets just aren't being talked about in the slides. I've already mentioned defensively. I think Konsa's probably the best one in terms of just, you know he's going to play if he's fit. And as I say, he's playing in the defence that isn't the best in terms of Aston Villa and their defensive numbers and the way they've been over the course of the season. But saying that with the double game week and game week 33 against Manchester City, it is quite tempting to maybe just bring in another Aston Villa player, or get at least 1 Aston Villa player into your team. For me, I'd be saying, as I say, at least have 1, maybe even 2, maybe an Aston Villa midfielder or attacker as well. Ollie Watkins potentially, who came off the bench again in the FA Cup today against Preston. Or you could go for a midfielder, but we just don't really know what their minutes are going to be like. I mean, Rashford was kind of playing the number 9 role as well today, so it's kind of an interesting one with Aston Villa. You don't exactly know how these minutes are going to pan out with the fixtures that they've got. The Champions League games, they've got the FA Cup games coming up. So Morgan Rogers is a pretty good one in terms of minutes, but with the new signings coming in January, he's not quite as nailed as what he was in the first half of the season. But I would be looking at an Aston Villa asset just due to the fact there's not really that many teams doubling overall. And if you're looking at it in that game week 33 double, you've only got 4 teams doubling. You've got Arsenal, you've got Aston Villa, you've got Crystal Palace, and you've got Man City. You've only got 4 teams actually doubling game week 33. So if you really want to attack the double game week, probably bringing in a couple of Aston Villa assets would be the way to go if they are to go on to double, which, as I say, we do expect them to do that. So for me, I would probably be bringing in a defender, even though, as I say, they're not the best defensive. We're bringing in a Konsa, and then out of the midfielders and forwards, it is honestly just a throw of a coin. It depends if you're thinking about your strikers, and you might want to have marmoush, Isak, and then maybe a Mateta as well. So you've got 3 options there, but if you wanted to kind of swap it about, you can maybe fit an Ollie Watkins in there. Or also in game week 33 as well, you could potentially transfer out Alexander Isak and then bring in Ollie Watkins as a straight swap, just to really attack that double game week in 33. As far as Arsenal assets go, I'm not a big fan of a lot of their options, in all fairness. I do like them defensively with Gabriel and Raya. I think Raya for me is the number 1 goalkeeper if I'm on a wild card. Raya will be the keeper that I'd be going for personally, just due to the fact we obviously know he's not going to get dropped at any time, and as well as that, Arsenal have got the best defensive numbers, and David Raya has been very good over the course of the season. Now, again, it's kind of the similar theme with Gabriel. I'll be saying the same reasons. He's also got that attacking threat as well. You could maybe go for a Timber as well. I believe started like 9 games in a row. So if you wanted to go for Gabriel or Timber, that's very valid. You could even go for a triple up on Arsenal defence, but I think for me that's a little bit overkill in terms of 3 Arsenal options. So we'll probably be looking then at Bukayo Saka, who's come back into training. He probably won't feature in game week 30, but he might be able to get fit and firing for game week 33. But if I was on a wildcard in game week 30, I'll be bringing in 2 Arsenal assets. I'll be bringing in Gabriel and I'll be bringing in Raya. And then going forward, I just don't really know who I'd really choose for Arsenal if Saka's not fit, which obviously right now he probably isn't. So I'll be going for 2 Arsenal assets on wildcard, and then basically when it gets to game week 33, just think about what Arsenal asset looks best at that time to bring in. So as I say, I think owning 2 Arsenal assets on a wildcard is probably the right way to go. But if you feel like an Arsenal attacker that's going to really do well in terms of like an Ødegaard, Trossard, someone like that, if you really think they're going to do well in the next few game weeks for Arsenal, then fair enough, go for that. But for me, I will probably just be doing 2 Arsenal defenders. I'll be having Gabriel, and as well as that, I'll be having David Raya. As for Man City assets, now we know they're going to probably be doubling in game week 33 against Everton and Aston Villa. So it's quite a kind double game week. Now, with the news of Erling Haaland, I really just think that boosts the chances and the odds in picking Omar Marmoush quite a lot now. So Omar Marmoush for me would be pretty much a lock-in into this wildcard. If we don't get any concrete news on Haaland especially, then Marmoush will 100% be in the wildcard draft for me. He's already the second most transferred in player as well. A lot of people are going to be jumping on this bandwagon of Omar Marmoush. And with the pedigree that he's got in the Bundesliga and the way that he started at Man City, honestly, I do not blame them in the slightest. Now, Gvardiol defensively for Man City is probably the best option. Very good going forward, can chips in with quite a lot of goals. And as I say, he's a very good player. He's been very good over the course of ever since he signed for Man City in terms of his defensive numbers. And then Erling Haaland, now the question is he fit or not? We're going to have to wait and see what Pep says in his press conferences. But it's not looking ideal, the fact that he literally wanted to be substituted off, the way that he's carried on playing and then wants to come off after he has to be substituted. It's not ideal. With the game against Leicester in only 3 days' time, it could really force people into the wildcard who weren't planning on wildcarding before, because it's such an expensive play and such a big miss. And as well as that, people on wildcard then might not be wanting to choose him because he's not guaranteed to even be fit for game week 30, let alone that he might not even be fit for any time longer than that. So let's have a look at a potential wildcard team that I've put together for game week 30 if you want to do. It's just like a little template if you want to kind of look at these kind of players. We're going to be looking at the teams we've just spoken about and putting everything together. So as far as a wildcard team goes, as you can see, as I say, it's targeting the teams that we know are going to be doubling in game week 33, and these are all the players and teams that could potentially double. Now, Nottingham Forest, we don't expect to double game week in 33. We expect that game to get put into blank game week 34, which is a shame. It's because Nottingham Forest do actually play on a Monday night in game week 33 and a Monday in game week 35, meaning that would only really have to get put into that game week 34 fixture. So as far as them, that's not ideal with the Nottingham Forest assets. But as far as the other teams, you've got Crystal Palace in there, you've got Man City, you've got Arsenal, you've got Aston Villa, you've got Newcastle also doubling 32 as well. So I'll be going for a triple up on Newcastle. I do think the best triple up for me is Isak, Gordon and Danberg for me personally. And then going on to the Arsenal assets, I do just think, we've got Trossard in there, but I wouldn't even be looking at him personally. I'm not sold on Arsenal attacking options for me. But Gabriel and Raya for me have to be an absolute lock-in for me. Then going on to Crystal Palace now, it depends on which way you want to go about this, because I wanted to fit some Aston Villa assets in there. Ollie Watkins does look like he could potentially be very good, but we don't even know if he's going to start in the game week 30. That's the problem. But, as I say, 3 Crystal Palace assets. For me, Daniel Munoz has to be in. I'll be having one of Eze or Sarr, or if not both of them, if you don't want to go for Mateta. So it depends on kind of what your structure is. You could also then you could swap Ismail Sarr or Eze out for a Morgan Rogers, Asensio, Rashford, someone like that. And then I'll probably say more of like a Morgan Rogers just for his more nailed minutes, or maybe Asensio. Rashford could potentially be on penalties as well, though. So kind of you could go for that if you wanted to go for an Aston Villa midfielder. Then you could swap out Watkins for Mateta. Then he's obviously got a game against Southampton, then back-to-back doubles in game week 32 and 33. So there's a lot of different ways you can play about with it. There's 4 good strikers, in my opinion, if Haaland is injured. As I say, you've got the 3 there, Marmoush, Watkins and Isak. And then you've also then got Mateta in there as well. So there's a lot of decent options. Then you've got the defensive options in Munoz, Gvardiol, Raya, who we've already discussed. Then you've got Ismail Sarr and Eze, Trossard potentially, but I'm not a big fan. Of course, I'd still be putting Mo Salah in my wildcard team. Then you're looking at, you've got Marmoush, Watkins, Isak, and then you've got Danberg on the bench as well. You've got a lot of options there that are very good for game week 33. They're of course going to blank in 34, so I'll be recommending you to then use that free hit chip if you've still got it in game week 34. You need to be prepared for that. But let me know what you think of that team in the comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you watched this point. Please do subscribe down below. It'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.